man, she says at the end of the book, I would love to name these men, but I am afraid they will come after me. I would love to name these men, but I am afraid they will tie me up in fucking litigation. They'll sue me. They'll bring me into court. They'll make my life impossible. They'll financially burden me. They'll financially burden my family. All that shit, right? And I felt like maybe a little thing I can do to honor Virginia Giuffre's memory, someone who I think is a hugely inspirational, incredible person who deserved more out of life. One little thing I can do is go through her book and figure out who these unnamed guys are, because she gives a lot of hints. She wanted people to figure it out. Hey, it's the Goblin Queen. So if you guys are familiar with this stream, if you've watched the stream before, you have heard me talk about the Epstein client list. Actually, that was my first ever stream. I was like, there is no Epstein client list, but like, why don't we try and make one based on what we know? Why don't we try and put together based on what we know, who is likely to be on this client list? Who did Epstein traffic girls to? And that was my first ever stream on, well, when I started this kind of the Extra Chill Goblin brand, let's call it. And I went through the list and did some stuff. And this book by Virginia Giuffre, who is the most prominent, or I should say, who was the most prominent accuser of Epstein, without whom, I think it was Finland Station mentioned last week, one of our recent streams, something along the lines of like, if it wasn't for Virginia Giuffre, we wouldn't know like anything about Epstein. Like she was like the one that came forward and originally was getting interviewed, Daily Mail. She had evidence, she had proof about her claims. She's the one in that famous photo of with her as a 17-year-old girl next to Ghislaine Maxwell with Prince Andrew, the Andrew formerly known as Prince Andrew, with his arm around her waist. That's Virginia Giuffre. She passed away just a few months ago, and posthumously, after she died, her autobiography was published. And I read it, and wow, what an incredibly, I don't even have the words for it, like a heartbreaking book. It is absolutely brutal. I don't even know how to really put it into words. Here. This is Virginia Giuffre. It's just, I don't know. I guess what I would say is it was even sadder than I thought it would be because, well, first of all, it's her whole entire life story. So she meets Ghislaine and Epstein when she's, I think, 16. But her life up until that point is just devastating. She was actually already being trafficked by this like evil pimp guy. I think his name's Ron Ettinger or something like that. Delves into her story about being found by him and whatever, like sort of forced into this like, human slavery thing, sex trafficking ring that he was doing when she was like a young kid, like 14. And then even before that, she was like, this was new. Like she had never said this publicly while she was alive, but the book details her being molested when she was 7 by her father and her father's friend until she was like 11 years old, I think. And it's just like, oh my God. And her entire life, there's just these powerful men, or men in positions of authority around her, taking advantage of her, exploiting her, and nothing is ever done about them. And it's just heartbreaking because like when it happens with Epstein, it's like she's falling into like a familiar pattern. Epstein and Ghislaine like recognized this about her, that she had this past. That made them like her more because she was whatever. She became one of Epstein's favorites. He was flying her all over the world with him. He wanted to have kids with her. He wanted her to have his baby. And eventually she escaped and she met a guy, this Australian guy. She got married to him. And the entire book, she's like, whenever it gets too depressing, she'll cut to like her current life with her husband, Robbie, and her kids. And she's just like, I'm so happy. Don't worry. Everything turns out great. Robbie's really a great guy. But then the book itself opens with this, like a disclaimer sort of thing. That's like, okay, so this version of the book was approved by Virginia. Like she did approve it. But then right before she died, she opened up to her family about how Robbie was actually like physically violent with her as well, and like abusing her. And they were engaged in a custody battle with the children, blah, blah, blah. Like, and so there's a thing at the beginning. It's like, so by the way, the one little ray of sunshine in this book is actually like where she really depicts him as like a hero to her. He like saved her. And oh God, it's just brutal. It's a harrowing read. And you just feel like society and people in power and the human race in general totally failed this woman completely. Her whole life was asking for help, telling people what was going on with her, what people were doing to her, and nobody did anything. So really depressing read. So she talks about some people who trafficked her, and she doesn't name them, but she says this about it near the end of the book. So you may notice that while I've named some men in this book, I have not named all the men I was trafficked to. There are certain men who I fear naming. I fear that they will seek to hurt me if I say their name here. There are other men who I was trafficked to who have threatened me in another way by asserting that they will use litigation to bankrupt me. One of those men's names has come up repeatedly in various court filings, and in response, he has told my lawyers that if I talk about him publicly, he will employ his vast resources to keep me in court for the rest of my life. While I have named him in sworn depositions and identified him to the FBI, I fear that if I do so again here, my family will bear the emotional and financial brunt of that decision. I have the same fears about another man who I was forced to have sex with many times, and this is actually just a crazy little thing, a man whom I also saw having sexual contact with Epstein himself. Okay, apparently Epstein was bisexual, or at least had sexual contact with men. I would love to identify him here, but the man is very wealthy and very powerful, and I fear that he too might engage me in expensive, life-ruining litigation. So I read this book, and like I said, it was like just a devastating read. Just like probably like, and I've read a lot of depressing shit, whatever. A lot of the best literature will make you sad. That's how you know it's good. But man, I read this. And I thought to myself, okay, I know enough about Epstein that I'm pretty sure I can figure out who at least a few of these guys that she names are. Because like she says at the end of the book, she's like, I would love to name these men, but I am afraid they will come after me. I would love to name these men, but I am afraid they will tie me up in fucking, litigation. They'll sue me. They'll bring me into court. They'll make my life impossible. They'll financially burden me. They'll financially burden my family. All that shit, right? And I felt like maybe a little thing I can do to kind of honor Virginia Giuffre's memory, someone who I think is a hugely inspirational, incredible person who, deserved more out of life. And one little thing I can do is go through her book and figure out who these unnamed guys are. Because you'll notice, I think, that she gives a lot of hints. I think she gives like so many hints because she wanted people to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. Go through the thing and figure out, hey, wait a minute. Who is it? Who are these guys? So let's do that. And a lot of these guys I knew because they were, they'd been mentioned by Virginia before. Like she said, there's one where she talked about him in court already, but due to other reasons, she was still afraid of coming forward. There's one guy that I'd never heard that she had accused of before, but I'm pretty sure I got the right guy. So here we go. All right. There's some other things, maybe I'll read some of this too before we get to the trying to figure people out. There's a few other things that were just interesting that I sort of wrote down. She talks a little bit about how the pyramid scheme worked. They would go to the nightclub and tell her to pick up girls. So Epstein's empire has been described as a pyramid scheme of abuse, where he would get these girls and then he would get them to get him other girls and then get those girls to get him other girls. That's how he was able to successfully, molest thousands of young girls. So I had already been told his criteria: recruits were preferably white with wholesome girl next door looks that made them appear between 12 and 17 years old. No piercings, no tattoos, and definitely no call girls. But his key requirement, other than looks, was vulnerability. Recruits had to be enough on the edge, as Epstein and Maxwell put it, that they would submit to sex in exchange for money. The script that I would soon be using myself with shameful regularity. So she'd go up to a girl, she'd see a girl that fit that description. She'd say, I work for a billionaire who has a taste for beautiful young girls. He has contacts in the acting, modeling, art worlds, and he'd love to help you make your dreams come true. Come meet him. You know, you often hear these girls say stuff like, oh, Ghislaine was so good at like talking girls into this. And I was just like, wow, like, you have to be like pretty like charming to be able to recruit all these young women. But no, it's just about money. This is just about the power imbalance between people who have money, where it's just like, hey, you're like starving or struggling or, you know, in a bad situation. You know, as they said, recruits had to be on the edge, you know, to be like, they desperately needed money, and they would go up. I work for a billionaire who has a taste for beautiful young girls. He has contacts in the acting, modeling, art worlds. We make our dreams come true. And it's just like, oh yeah, of course that would work. Of course that would work. Money makes the world go around. And there were a few things she mentioned about blackmail. I'll just read this. Once Maxwell and Epstein had started trafficking me to strange men, I often wondered what they stood to gain. One theory is that they trafficked girls to some of their powerful acquaintances in the hope of being owed future favors. My impression of many of these men is that they didn't know how to pursue women. Awkward and socially immature, it was as if their big brains were missing the ability to interact with other people. By giving them obedient girls, Epstein eliminated their need to persuade or entice potential sexual partners, and they were grateful for it. Another theory, which is supported by the fact that Epstein's houses were all outfitted with video cameras in every room, is that he wanted to record men in compromising positions in order to blackmail them later. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that Epstein kept a huge library of videotapes that had been recorded inside his houses. In the Manhattan townhouse, Epstein himself showed me the room in which he monitored and recorded the camera feeds. He suggested to me that those videotapes he so meticulously collected in the bedrooms and bathrooms of his various houses gave him power over others. He explicitly talked about using me and what I'd been forced to do with certain men as a form of blackmail, so these men would owe him favors. Could it be that someone who feared exposure by Epstein had found a way to exterminate him? I know that the official findings, including an Inspector General's report issued in June 2023, say this is impossible, but I will never be entirely convinced. Interesting. So Virginia was one of the people who did not think that Epstein killed himself. Okay, here we go. So this is how Virginia writes about the first man she was trafficked to. This is how she describes it. My need to feel nothing only grew stronger when Epstein and Maxwell began lending me out to their friends. My need to feel nothing meaning like she's traumatized. She's in an ongoing situation of abuse. She's trapped in. She has nowhere else to go. And she wanted to feel nothing. She becomes addicted to Xanax and all kinds of drugs. As a lot of victims of this type of abuse are. That's what she means by my need to feel nothing. So the first time, Epstein made it sound as if he were launching me on an exciting new phase of my massage training. My new clients, as Epstein described them, were a man and his pregnant wife. Both needed massages, Epstein said. Epstein had specific instructions on how I was to treat them. Be gentle with her, he said. Make her comfortable, but save most of your energy for him. When Epstein said this, I looked up. Did he mean what I thought he meant? Give him whatever he wants. Epstein confirmed. Just like you do for me. Epstein said he was sending me as an emissary, so how I behaved would reflect on him. It was important that I uphold his reputation. Okay, Finland, you're a little bit ahead of me there. But I was going to ask, who do you guys think this is? Indeed, that is who I think this is. Glenn and Ava Anderson Dubin. No, this was not aboard their private planes. This was in a very fancy, I think a hotel or a villa in Palm Beach, not too far from Epstein's place at Brillo Way. Now, was Glenn Dubin's wife pregnant around this time? So immediately, it's a couple, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, Glenn and Ava Dubin. Well, Chelina Dubin, who's the famous kid of theirs, was born in 1995, and this happened in 2001. I looked into this. Chelina's born in 1995, but they do have 3 other children. This is from the Dubin Family Foundation website.com. There's a photo of the Dubins all together I wanted to bring up. Well, here we go. So here's the Dubin family. There's Ava Anderson Dubin, Epstein's former girlfriend in the middle there. She's a Swedish model and some kind of a scientist, rocket scientist or something, some kind of really smart scientist, brain scientist, one of those. And she was one of Epstein's girlfriends in the 90s. And in 95, she married another one of Epstein's friends, Glenn Dubin, a hedge fund billionaire, Glenn Dubin. And they have 3 kids together. These are their 3 kids. This is Chelina Dubin. This was the girl that Epstein said was his favorite person in the world. She called him Uncle Jeff. He wanted to marry her near the end of his life. He was like, what if I marry Chelina? Then I can give her all of my money and my will. This is Chelina Dubin. So I've just learned about their other two kids, Maya Dubin over here on the left, and this guy over on the other side. What's his name? Oh, he's another one of the Dubins. Jordan Dubin. All right. Now, I don't have a birth year, but remember, this is supposed to take place in 2001. Jordan Dubin. Here's the guy. Look at this guy. Looks like a businessman. Looks like he knows what he's doing. Looks like he knows a lot about business. Jordan Dubin. Jordan graduated from Harvard Business School in 2025. Okay, he graduated from, that's grad school, 2025, so, all right. Before returning to Cambridge for his graduate studies, Jordan was a private equity associate at L. Catterton and previously held a similar role at Garnett Station Partners. He began his career as an investment banking analyst in both the healthcare and financial sponsors groups at Goldman Sachs. Jordan is the co-founder of Guild Garage Group, a repair and maintenance platform that serves as a preferred partner for business owners in the garage door industry. All right. He graduated in 2019 with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from Harvard College, where he was a wide receiver on the Harvard football team and a member of the Financial Analysts Club. Okay, so he graduated from Harvard in 2019. My theory was that he was born in 2001, but it looks like if he graduated from Harvard in 2019, he would only be 18 years old, so he couldn't be graduating from Harvard then, right? Okay. All right, maybe not him. Down here, I just thought this was funny. In 2004, Jordan, along with his sisters and friends, created Robin Hood Lemonade, an initiative that encourages young people to raise funds for Robin Hood by hosting lemonade stands across the New York City tri-state area. 2 decades later, Lemonade is still going strong, raising over $1.5 million to help elevate low-income New Yorkers from poverty. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. So Robin Hood is one of their philanthropic, one of Glenn Dubin's philanthropy organizations. And I just thought when I thought he was born in 2001, I was like, okay, so he was 3 years old and they're putting this on his resume. They're like, and another cool thing he did when he was 3 is he helped create a Robin Hood Lemonade. And I looked into it. Robin Hood Lemonade is still a thing. Okay, wait, so maybe it's not him, but is he, what about the other one? Maya Anderson. Maya Dubin, rather. Maya Dubin, do we know anything? An analyst at Consello. She graduated from Harvard with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology at 2023. Okay, so if she graduated in 2023, if she was born she got her bachelor's in 2023, if she was born in 2001, actually that would make sense. Do we have anything else? She has a lot more on her resume. Summer 2018 with the Robin Hood Foundation. Yeah, she has a lot more on her resume than her older brother, I guess. They didn't even need to put in the lemonade stand that she had when she was a 3-year-old. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I did see some people saying, Ava Anderson was pregnant in 2001. That's when one of her kids was born. I could not find anything solid. But just based on when Maya Dubin got her bachelor's degree in 2023, 22 years old, bachelor's degree, the maths there. The maths. It's not really a lemonade stand, One Queen, Hot Goblin. Lemonade, Robin Hood. Where is it? Here, Lemonade. This is like the Dubins, what's it called? Charity, Robin Hood, and they do a thing where they encourage children to raise money for families in need or whatever. It's not so much a lemonade stand that you're picturing, like a bunch of kids outside with a folding table and some disgusting, undrinkable concoction that they're selling for 25 cents. This is like, a national whatever thing. This is what rich children get to do instead of a lemonade stand. They make like a lemonade corp. They make a lemonade NGO. So this is like a yearly event that they do. Since Lemonade's inception in 2004, children and family-hosted lemonade stands in the area have raised $1.5 million to help elevate low-income New Yorkers from poverty. Also seems like a fucking money laundering organization to me, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so that's who I think that is. And it's just some of the details they give in here. A man and his pregnant wife, she's pregnant, she's giving us enough to try and connect the dots here. That's what I'm thinking. And this is just something that I don't think I've talked about on stream before, but came across this while I was looking for Dubin stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, this is nuts. I should read this. This is from one of the Dubin's chefs told this story. Really, really fucked up. Ronaldo Rizzo, working as a private chef to the billionaire investor Glenn Dubin and his wife at the time that Mr. Epstein's sexual abuse is alleged to have taken place. One witness, Ronaldo Rizzo, was in tears as he recounted Maxwell bringing a 15-year-old girl to his employer's home, so not Giuffre, but a different girl, who in utmost distress told him that Maxwell stole the young girl's passport and tried to make her have sex with Epstein and then threatened her, the document said. Ms. Giuffre's attorney added, Mr. Rizzo also testified that he watched Maxwell direct a room full of underage girls to kiss, dance, and touch one another in a sexual way for Maxwell and Epstein to watch. This is a high price, billionaire private chef making this allegation. This is so intense. Yeah. Anyway, just thought I'd read that. The crazy thing about Virginia's story is that it sounds like if a lot of this stuff hadn't been corroborated by other people, it would be totally unbelievable, right? She mentions a lot, her husband, Robbie, she never really told him the extent of her shit with Epstein until she started telling the world about it. She told him a little bit about it, but she didn't tell him every single thing about it. And he was like, why didn't you tell me? He was really upset. But it's just God, imagine you're dating someone and they tell you this story. The extent of this story is so unbelievable. And I'm just I think that is maybe a piece of it. I think that maybe is a piece of why he was able to kind of do this in plain sight for so long and kind of flaunt it. All right, moving on here. Second person. So this is the one that I actually didn't know about. The second person I was lent out to was a psychology professor whose research Epstein was helping to fund. He was a quirky little man with a balding pate of white hair, and from his nervous affect, it seemed he wasn't used to being with women. The man never asked directly for sex, but Epstein had made it clear that was what he expected me to provide. Keep him happy, like you did with your first client, Epstein had said. Now, anybody have any guesses on this guy? What do we know about him? Psychology professor, Epstein was funding his research, balding pate of white hair, awkward, nervous, wasn't used to being with women. Yeah, that's our little checklist here. And if you don't know, I don't blame you, but here's a little clip I got from the Harvard Crimson about a guy named Stephen Kosslyn. Kosslyn's research received $200,000 from Epstein between 1998 and 2002. And Kosslyn was a psychology professor. He was actually the head of the psychology department at Harvard in 2005, but this would have been, 2001 around. Pinker, that's so interesting. That's so interesting you say that. Yeah. So this is the thing. I think this is going to make sense in a second. Yes, no, Pinker isn't balding. Pinker's got all his hair. Pinker's got too much hair, if anything. So, and then I looked up. So this new book is there's a lot of new stuff in it, but a lot of it is sort of repeated from, not all of it, but a lot of it is repeated from this manuscript for an unpublished book she wrote called The Billionaire Playboys Club. I think that was what it was called. I looked up the story in that book to compare and to check it out. Oh, by the way, here, I'll show you. I got to show you a picture of this guy, right? Stephen Kosslyn. So this is the guy. A balding, how'd you describe it? A balding pate of white hair. This is him. And now I want to also, here, I'll copy and paste this into the thing here. Stephen Kosslyn. Now, similar passage in Billionaire Playboys Club. So this might be what you're thinking of to the Finland. 2 weeks later, as if Jeffrey was trying to lighten my spirits, he told me I would be going to his island to meet a new client. He is a Harvard professor named Stephen, redacted last name. I would be spending 2 days with him, showing him around the island, dining with him, and treating him to a massage whenever he wanted. Without Jeffrey even verbalizing the need to have sex with him, he told me to keep him happy like I had my first client. I packed my suitcase with island apparel, kissed TJ, that's her boyfriend, goodbye, who had at least offered me a warm embrace upon the news of my miscarriage, but none other than that, knowing it wasn't his. Okay, that's another part of the story. Don't have time to get into. Stephen was a quirky little man with white hair and a mad scientist look about him. We arrived separately, and I greeted him when one of the housekeepers picked him up from the airport and arrived by boat instead of helicopter, as Jeffrey. So in the original one, we have his first name. Last name was in the original one, but it was redacted because we only got this through a court filing. Now, I think maybe what Finland was talking about when you were guessing Pinker was this, because I remember reading this years ago and being like, that's got to be Steven Pinker. He's got mad scientist hair with white hair and a mad scientist look about him. Because if you don't know Steven Pinker, this is Steven Pinker. White hair and mad scientist look, like everyone thought of him. But I will point out, The spelling of Stephen is different. This is Stephen with a V. This is Stephen with a PH, Stephen Coslin. So this is Stephen with a PH. And yeah, I mean, like, he looks like he just got freshly groomed for this photo shoot next to his best friend in the world, a model of a brain. But I can imagine that, like, a lot of times this guy's hair is kind of crazy and mad scientist-y. You know what I'm saying? The beard is kind of mad scientist-y, if we're being honest. Odd way to shave a beard. Anyway, so yeah, I always assumed that was Steven Pinker. My apologies to Steven Pinker. I don't feel too bad for him. He did help Epstein out a lot. He did help Epstein out during his trial. Specifically, there was a little thing he was tangentially involved with. And also another thing, found this article from another university that Coslin taught at. I think Coslin was a founding member of this university, which doesn't seem to exist anymore. I don't know. This is from Minerva Quest or whatever. I don't really know. I don't really know what Minerva is. But this is them sort of acknowledging, oh, it looks like some guy who's really involved with us is facing allegations. And then they mentioned a bunch of shit in here. Former Harvard psychology professor Stephen Coslin received individual funds from Epstein, named him a visiting fellow. He got $200,000 from Epstein during the exact time that Virginia says he became her second man that she was trafficked to. Although Coslin is no longer working at Minerva, the revelation of his blah, blah, blah. So they say Coslin mentioned that he'd been funded by Epstein and that Epstein was a key influence on at least one of Coslin's psychology papers. Really? That's embarrassing. In 2005, Coslin named Epstein a visiting fellow in the Harvard psychology department, which is weird because in order to be a fellow, you have to be like another professor, which Epstein was not. Epstein was a high school dropout. Yeah, Epstein has neither the doctorate degree nor academic experience with psychology required to apply for that position. So weird that I did that. And visitor logs show Coslin meeting Epstein in prison in 2008. He visited Coslin in prison twice over a weekend in 2008. They spent a total of about 10 hours together in jail. Keep in mind, Epstein was allowed to leave jail like 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. So yeah. Oh yeah. Reddington, the real important people, probably not in the book, is probably heavily edited. Well, like, keep in mind, like, she does name some people, notably Prince Andrew. She details 3 meetings with Prince Andrew, 3 separate times she was sexually assaulted by Prince Andrew using his name. And coincidentally, Prince Andrew was stripped of his royal shit like 2 days before this book came out. So that something did come of that. But there are people that she mentions and she talks about and she tells you about them. She even describes them, right? Like she's saying, oh, he's got balding white hair. You know, she's giving you a physical description. I feel like she's giving you enough that you can track them down like this. All right, moving on here. This is just more about the people that she was trafficked to, not really specifically naming someone, but Epstein thought of himself as the same level as degree-holding innovators and theoreticians, and because he funded many of their research projects and flew them around on his jets, he was largely welcomed into their fold. Then Epstein offered some of them a bonus, sex with one of us girls. In the coming months, I would be told to service many men whom I'd later learn were illustrious in their fields. On any given night, Epstein would tell me to wait in the massage room until one of these strangers entered, clearly expecting sex. Scientists weren't the only people Epstein used his vast resources to win access to, which is how I came to be trafficked to a multitude of powerful men. Among them were a gubernatorial candidate who was soon to win election in a western state and a former U.S. senator. So that has got to be Bill Richardson and what's the other guy's name again? Hang on, I got my list here. Epstein affiliations. So this is my list of people who I would put on my Epstein list. We've got Bill Richardson, and who's the other one? George Mitchell. Thank you, Finland. Thank you for that. Yes, so that's who those two are. Since Epstein usually neglected to introduce me to these men by name or introduce me to them at all, like they just walked into the room that she was in. Like, you know, she wasn't hanging out with them or anything. This part sounds much more like she is a piece of property. You know, she's not like there isn't even the pretense that they're all hanging out together. I would only learn who some of them were years later when I studied photographs of Epstein's associates and recognized the faces of those I was forced to have sex with. All right, here we go. Naomi Campbell's 31st. In May 2001, Epstein, Maxwell, and I flew to the French Riviera to attend the model Naomi Campbell's 31st birthday party, which was being held on a yacht. That night, I wore the same outfit I'd worn when I first met Prince Andrew. The shiny jeans emblazoned with horses, the tight-fitting pink top. So we actually have photos of this from Getty Images. Here's Naomi Campbell, okay? good friend of Epstein. A lot of suspicious ties to Epstein, flew on Lolita Express constantly. In the modeling world, Ford models, also connected to Epstein. And there is a young 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre. She's actually wearing the exact same, I think I have that photo here too somewhere. Yeah. This photo you've seen of Prince Andrew, she's wearing the exact same tank top and like colorful pants. Here she is again. This is also at the Naomi Campbell party. There's Epstein next to her. There's Naomi Campbell there. This is another photo here where you can see Ghislaine, and you can actually get a better view of Virginia's pants. She's wearing the same outfit here. This is just slightly after. And yes, they're on a boat in Saint-Tropez in France. The birthday girl ignored me, and her white-haired boyfriend Flavio Briatore, also connected to Epstein, an Italian businessman and convicted con man. Yes, that's him. That's him there. So like all of these people were hanging out with this like she looks so young. She looks like a child. Anyway, so after this party, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the first guy that we're guessing is Glenn Dubin. She calls him billionaire number 1. So then she says, it could have been after this party that a friend of Epstein's, I'll call him billionaire number 2, caught a ride with us back to La Bastille de Saint-Tropez, the 5-star mansion turned hotel surrounded by 4 Provençal farmhouses where we were all staying. On the way, Epstein made it clear that he wanted me to give this 50-year-old stranger with the thinning brown hair a massage. So when we arrived, I accompanied the man to his cottage. Skip through the part where she describes that experience. After we had intercourse, the man offered to pay me triple what Epstein paid me if I'd come work for him. I politely said no, said my goodbyes. I don't believe Naomi has ever offered any public comments. People tried to cancel Naomi for many, many reasons, and it's never really worked. She's kind of, maybe she's like a bit of a Donald Trump in that way. She's just kind of immune to it. Flavio, that's how you know he's great. All right. But okay, what do we think, guys? Any guesses? This one I will say is kind of a B-side, but we know he was associated with Epstein from before. At least the guy I think it is. 50-year-old stranger with thinning brown hair. I'll tell you who I think it is. This guy, Thomas Pritzker. He would have been so he was born June 1950. This was Naomi Campbell's 31st birthday, which is in May, I think. May, I looked it up. It says up here, in May 2001. So in May 2001, he would have been exactly 50. He has thinning brown hair. Some photos, I guess it looks more brown than others. It sort of looks more brown at the top here, and then black on the sides, gray on the tips there. But yeah, this is the chairman of Hyatt Hotels. He was also accused by Giuffre before in this deposition. I looked up the part here where he sexually trafficked to anybody else on the list. I'll continue with the list here. Nadia Marcinkova, I was not sent to her, but she was part of it with Epstein, Marvin Minsky, Tom Pritzker. Who's Tom Pritzker? Q is the lawyer asking your questions. A is obviously Virginia. I don't know exactly what he does, but I think he's some kind of academic. So I guess this is a guy who, like she mentions earlier, she didn't really know who they were until later. But I think he's some kind of academic. She was having sex with a lot of scientists and stuff at the time. And I'm guessing that he was just kind of like awkward and, she was like, okay, this guy must be a scientist if he's this awkward around women or girls, as the case may be. And did you have sex with him? Yes. How many times? Off the top of my head, just once. Where were you? I believe Tom was at Mexico, which I think she means New Mexico, or maybe Mexico, the country. Both of those are not, neither of those are France, which is Saint-Tropez, which is where this story comes from. But the way that I'm sort of seeing it is those questions are off the top of her head. This story is like in her biography that her like co-writer, like her ghostwriter, whatever you call it, the woman who she wrote it with, who writes this whole introduction about like the decision to publish it and, about all the stuff about Robbie. She like researched everything, got dates, got whatever, the facts right. This interview was from before like these photos came out of them at Naomi Campbell's party. So, I mean, I'm guessing that that's just a sort of a flub there. She thought it was whatever. But yes, you are correct, Finland. JB Pritzker is a member of a massively wealthy fucking hotel family. This is like Whitney Webb shit. Like, they are both JB and Thomas Pritzker are members of the Pritzker family. So Abram Nicholas A.N. Pritzker, son of Ukrainian Jewish immigrants, graduated from Harvard Law School in 1920, went to work at his father's law firm, eventually called Pritzker and Pritzker. His investment in real estate and companies around Chicago began the family's accumulation of wealth. He has 3 kids. J.A. Pritzker, that's the dad of Thomas Pritzker here, and he founded Hyatt Hotels, and this became like their biggest holding. Also, Whitney Webb has a big thing about the hotel industry being really big in the blackmail world because they own hotels. So like Donald Trump also in the hotel industry, like a lot of these guys were. And there's Robert Pritzker's brother, Donald Pritzker here, graduated from Harvard Law School. Hyatt Hotels grew significantly under his leadership. So they all sort of ran Hyatt Hotels, the Hyatt Empire. Robert J. B. Pritzker is the current governor of Illinois. And he also ran the Pritzker Group, which owns a bunch of their, whatever you call it, holdings, including the Hyatt Hotels, with Anthony Pritzker, this one. Private equity firm, which runs industrial firms and has a stake in Elon Musk's SpaceX. Cool. I gotta say, I've been really irritated lately by like JB Pritzker getting so many props for how he's standing up to Donald Trump and people being like, he should run for fucking president. He should run for president because he's like the Chicago or whatever, Illinois governor. And he's been like, when ICE comes to town, I will stand up to them. And like, don't get me wrong, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad he's doing that. But please, God, please, Democrat fucking DNC God, you do not have to do this. You do not have to run a second fucking Democrat with intense family ties to Jeffrey Epstein. This one's even worse because this one actually, there is a very likely fucking sexual assault allegation there. You do not need to do this again. We do not need to rerun Pizzagate. Please, I beg you. Like, the best thing that is happening to the Democrats is that Trump looks very bad with his Epstein association. Don't fucking run this guy. Please. I don't, maybe he's great. Maybe hey, he's not his cousin. He's a different guy. He's a fucking billionaire from a billionaire family. So he must be some sort of evil ghoul. I think. But I'm not saying, maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not accusing him of anything with Epstein. It's just you don't need to do that shit. Let it go, guys. Let it go. God. Although it would be funny to watch the fucking right flip-flop hard again to care about Epstein files, the corporate right anyway, politicians. All of a sudden the votes to release the Epstein files exactly flip. He looks like he's got Lego hair. It's snapped onto his head. He's got a little, but yeah, I don't know. I will say I watched a couple of his speeches that he gave about Trump and ICE and stuff, and I thought they were good. But still, no, let's not do that. Let's not fucking do that shit. Anyway, this part's crazy too. After we had intercourse, the man offered to pay me triple what Epstein paid me if I'd come work for him. I politely said no and said my goodbyes. What a bizarre guy. Billionaires, eh? Yeah, they both do. Both those guys do. J.B. Pritzker and Donald Pritzker, and Thomas Pritzker and J.A. Pritzker. It's like Thomas J. Pritzker. They I don't know. Genes are strong in this family, I guess. Penny Pritzker was also in the Obama administration, Secretary of Commerce. Yeah. Donated $100 million to Harvard. To Harvard. That's interesting. That's weird. The SpaceX connection here too. You can see how people really lose their minds. You can see how people completely lose touch with reality and get fully noided, fully pilled. I looked for that stuff. Finland. Any evidence Thomas Pritzker was in France for Campbell's birthday or that he knew her. I looked through a bunch of photos. I found this one. This is actually with the Prince of Monaco, another piece of shit, I understand. And I was like, is that him in the back? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's him. That's just another guy with a brutal hairline. But yeah, I don't know. Or that he knew her? That's a good question. There honestly isn't much about Thomas Pritzker at all. I looked on Getty Images, there's no pictures of him. Oh, okay, look at this. Okay, I didn't even see this, but this further cements my theory here. Further into the testimony, Giuffre recounted an experience with an unnamed owner of a large hotel chain in France for Naomi Campbell's birthday party. Yeah, owner of a large hotel chain. We got from the what's it called? Testimony plus thinning brown hair, billionaire. It's getting more and more and more. Okay, here's the thing. We can actually look at the testimony here too. Yeah. Were you sent to have sex with the owner of a large hotel chain by Ghislaine Maxwell? I believe that was one time in France. What time in France? I believe it was around the time that Naomi Campbell had a birthday party. Where did you have sex with the owner of a large hotel chain in France? In his own cabana townhouse thing. It was part of a hotel, but I wouldn't call it a hotel. Jeffrey was staying there. Ghislaine was staying there. Emmy was staying there. I was staying there. This other guy was staying there. I don't know his name. I was instructed by Ghislaine to go and give him an erotic massage. So she used the words erotic massage. No, that's my word. The word massage is what they would use. That's their code word. Yeah. I don't see him anywhere here, but there's not that many photos. There's not that many photos. He might be in the background. There aren't that many, honestly, that I could find. I just looked on Getty. There are other pages to look for like celebrity photos, but I looked, I couldn't find anything. Closest I could find is this dude, but I think that's just some drunk guy. All right. Now, this is the darkest part of the entire book. Well, maybe not, but oh, fuck. Honestly, there's a lot of competition. This might be one of the darkest parts of the book. She says, you may notice that while I've named some of the men in this book, I've not named all of the men I was trafficked to. There are certain men who I fear naming. The man who brutally raped me towards the end of my time with Epstein and Maxwell, for example. The man who I've called the former prime minister in court documents. I know his name, and he knows what he did to me. Even though when others have sought comment from him about my allegations, he has denied them. I fear that this man will seek to hurt me if I say his name here. So I read you this quote earlier, but I sort of cut out the part about the prime minister because this comes at the end of her time with him. Oh, okay. You know what? Yeah. I don't even really want to like read you any more of it because it's just so honestly horrifying. It's the absolute worst thing. It's like she was obviously sexually assaulted by many guys, many of Epstein's friends. This guy, she was sexually assaulted by him 3 times. And the first time he was like hurting her. Like she thought she was going to die. She describes how he made her bleed, how she cried in pain, and that just made him more aroused. She was trying to escape. She couldn't. She was just blah, 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 like looking down at her with these dark eyes. I think, you called it earlier. Can't imagine being afraid of Tony Blair. Yeah, it's hard to picture that. But you mentioned earlier, the very first chat in this entire stream. Yeah, here, I'll get it. I'm going to go ahead and guess one of them is Ehud Barak. And that is who I think this is. So Ehud Barak, very fucked up individual. A little bit about Ehud Barak, former prime minister of Israel, one of Epstein's late in life friends, all the way to the end, business partner of Epstein, was doing all this international shit in Russia and Mongolia with Epstein, all this fucking international spy shit. His emails recently got leaked. So many of them to go through. Please follow Drop Site's coverage of it. Really good stuff. But another thing about this guy, he's very awkward. Like a lot of the men that Epstein would traffic girls to. He's not really like a people person. He's not necessarily the most charming guy. How did he become prime minister of a country? Well, he is also he's Israel's most decorated soldier. He's gotten as many or more awards as any other soldier in Israel's history. I believe that is the case. Oh yeah. Barak shares with 2 others the honor of being the most highly decorated soldier in Israel's history. That's not even just IDF. That's like any soldier. So this dude, this is a dark man. Okay? This is a guy who is, like, even for Israel, was an especially brutal soldier. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what more can you say? Like, this guy's a dark man. And she describes it. She describes him. I fear that this man will seek to hurt me if I say his name here. Fun fact. Also, here's a photo of him. This is Ehud Barak visiting Epstein in 2019. Right before Epstein went to jail. And these are 4 women who also were visiting Epstein that day. So girls, maybe I should say women or girls. Yeah. And here's just a fun fact about this is that Virginia, so all these other guys, right, that we know Virginia made allegations about, Bill Richardson, Glenn Dubin, Marvin Minsky, the whole list of names, Dershowitz. These are people that she named in court. But funnily enough, Virginia has never named Ehud Barak in court. The only reason we know that she accused him is because of Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz, during one of his depositions between him and, not depositions, what's it called? Court filing. I don't know. I don't fucking know anything. In his most recent court filing, so this is his defamation suit against Virginia. And this is him writing. Giuffre is also alleged she was forced to have sex with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. And then he names a bunch of the other guys: Bill Richardson, George Mitchell, Marvin Minsky, Thomas Pritzker, Glenn Dubin, Jean-Luc Brunel, an unnamed prince, foreign president, and owner of a French hotel chain. But we didn't actually know who that Ehud Barak is. We didn't actually know that because that, again, was redacted in the book, in the Billionaires Playboy Club or whatever. It was redacted wherever it was. But Dershowitz saw it, and he decided to fucking put it out there. He decided to let people know. Yeah, foreign president might be Andres Pastrana. So I don't think so. I think that the foreign president is Ehud Barak, because she's also saying an unnamed prince, owner of a French hotel chain, and like he already has Prince Andrew and Thomas Pritzker in this thing here, right? So this is Dershowitz, the fucking lawyer that does not give a fuck, just figures out the fucking point and argues the shit out of it. No one, I don't think anyone owns a French hotel chain here. I think this is misreading her testimony, because there's the part that we read earlier, right? Where she says, I was trafficked to Tom Pritzker. And then there's the part later, where did you have sex with the owner of a large hotel chain? That's still Thomas Pritzker in France, meaning they were in France for Naomi Campbell's birthday party. But Dershowitz saw it and was like, the owner of a large hotel chain in France, and maybe he even knew who she was talking about here, but he was just like, I need to like add a bunch of other stuff, because adding all of these people makes Virginia number one, it makes her seem more crazy. Like, really, oh, you were assaulted by a prime minister, a president, a blah, 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 this guy, all these famous people, really, it makes your story more unbelievable. And also, I think Dershowitz's strategy here was, he named Ehud Barak. This is how we know about Ehud Barak. Not from anything Virginia said, from Dershowitz. He names Ehud Barak here because I think he's like, if I get Ehud Barak's name attached to this, then I'll have more of these powerful men fighting on my side, trying to say that she's a liar. Like, that can only help me. So yeah, sorry, Ehud Barak, I'm going to blow up your spot a little bit. Yeah, that is what I think. Dershowitz is naming Andrew, Thomas Pritzker, and Ehud Barak twice. I don't know if he's doing that intentionally, but I think maybe it would make sense to me, knowing what a scumbag he is. And he's doing it to make her seem crazy. So yeah, this is Julie K. Brown, one of the main Epstein journalists, the original one that kind of blew up. And she posted this in 2020. New lawyer Alan Dershowitz, in his most recent court filing, reveals former Israeli PM Ehud Barak is among a number of important men who have been accused by Giuffre as being part of Jeffrey Epstein's sex scheme. It's the first time Barak, an Epstein friend, has been named. So yeah, Barak saw that and was like, thanks, Dershowitz. Fuck, dude. What the fuck, man? God damn it. But, they knew he was visiting Epstein. Yeah, that is my final name that I was able to scrounge up. I think that the unnamed people, we got billionaire number 1. I think that's Glenn Dubin. Billionaire number 2, I think that's Thomas Pritzker. The nerdy scientist, Stephen Koslin, and the former prime minister, Ehud Barak. I believe that is what she was saying. And I think, I don't know, maybe this is wishful thinking or something, but I do believe that the way that she sort of talks about them, she's like, I would love to name them, but I can't. And also the intro where before she died, she messaged her co-writer and was like, even if I die, this needs to get out. I want this book to be published. I think she was intentionally trying to give people enough information that you would be able to figure out who she was talking about. Combining her book with her testimony, with other things we know. I think there's that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Just muddy the waters and confuse people as well as me. Yeah. That is part of his fucking MO. That's what he does. Muddying the waters. He's trying to make her seem unbelievable. He's trying to make her story sound crazy. He's trying to get other people involved. He's trying to intimidate her by, you can tell from how she writes about Ehud Barak, presumably in here, I fear this man will seek to hurt me if I say his name here. And she's always been like that. So you can see why Dershowitz would be like, it's Ehud Barak, everybody. It's Ehud Barak. He's the guy that Virginia is afraid is going to come kill her. It's definitely Ehud Barak. That's because he is a irredeemable piece of shit. Maybe the worst guy ever to live, Alan Dershowitz. A complete fucking evil psychopath. Okay, so Virginia Giuffre, I've talked a little bit about her book, Nobody's Girl, but she actually wrote a version of Nobody's Girl years and years ago, which was never published, but it was released as part of a deposition. And in the deposition, she named, sorry, not in a deposition. What's it called? Discovery phase or something like that. I think it was her lawsuit against Guylaine. She wrote this book, basically her life story. It's a little bit rough around the edges compared to Nobody's Girl, which she had a co-writer on. But the co-writer basically took Billionaire's Playboy Club, which is the original book, and tweaked it, did some research to make sure that all the things she was saying happened at the right time, corroborated it with other people who were there and newspaper articles and blah, blah, blah. Did kind of stuff that we do on this stream, but probably more professionally. And so the book is a lot more professionally done. Now, one thing that was really interesting to me, so was it the Alan Dershowitz lawsuit? I forget which lawsuit it was that this book came out, but this was an attachment in one of the emails that Epstein got, and it is the entire contents of Billionaire's Playboy Club, but with no redactions. Because this shit was already released, and we had it for a long, long time. But there was fucking redactions in it, so we didn't know any of the people she was naming. She met someone that we always could see this before. She met someone whose first name was Stephen, and it didn't say his last name. We never knew last name. He's a Harvard professor named, and now look, we got it, Stephen Koslin. Now, if you watched last week's stream, I went over who do we think a lot of these unnamed guys are. All right. I just went over this. And it was kind of a lot of work. I went over and I tried to figure out who the guys she didn't name in the published book, because she didn't name almost anyone. She names Prince Andrew, and that's pretty much it. Everybody else she describes them physically, but she doesn't name them. Well, I'm looking back in here, and I did come to, even though a lot of people thought for a long time this was Steven Pinker, I did come to the conclusion it was Stephen Koslin, and now a week later, here we are. We have proof. It was Stephen Koslin. We have the full name. We also have another person. Look at this. This is the first person that she was ever lent to, I think is the way she says it. I'll be going to exclusive hotel. I will be meeting my first ever clients. Only their first names. I was given some instructions and the address where to meet. Glenn and Ava. And did I not tell you guys? Glenn and Ava Dubin. This is what I thought. Here we go. We got it on tape. We got it in 4K. A fully unredacted version of this entire biography. Really nuts. I actually haven't seen anyone talk about this yet, but this is a big deal. These are people who were protected before. Is Barack in there? I don't think so. But I think Barack was the one she was always really afraid of. So she didn't actually name him. The only reason we found out about Ehud Barak was because Dershowitz told everyone that she had named him, but she'd never named him publicly. Yeah, I don't see Ehud Barak in here. Yeah, Prime Minister, I got nothing. But let's try Israel. Nothing for Israel. My theory was always that, because she mentioned a Spanish prime minister, my theory was always that Spanish prime minister she's mentioning was probably Ehud Barak, because he's got an Israeli accent and maybe she thought it was Spanish, but I'm not sure. But who are the other names? Yeah, Mitchell. Let's try George Mitchell. George Mitchell's in there. Pritzker. Yes, Pritzker. No Pritzker. Before we were reading about how Virginia, she wouldn't be introduced to these guys. She would just sort of be forced to have sex with them. And then later on, people would show her photos and she'd be like, yes, I did have sex with that guy. And they'd be like, oh, really? That's the fucking, Israeli prime minister or whatever. She didn't know who they were at the time. Well, there's one of her depositions where she talks about Pritzker. And she's like, yes, I did have sex with him. I think he's a academic or something, which I always took to mean he was super awkward and uncomfortable and bad around women. So she was probably like, okay, but I guess he must be a genius. And it's no, he's just a fucking billionaire Nepo baby hotel chain owner. Anyway, I haven't taken the time to dig through this whole thing yet. I started reading through it and then I was just like, oh, there's so many more emails to read. I can't get bogged down in this. I already read this, but I think there's a lot, there's gotta be a lot here because there was a bunch of shit redacted in the other version.